Welcome to Mary McCorvey Experience Over Expectations podcast, which you can find on YouTube, Substack, and any place you find your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe today.
Hello, I'm Mary McCorvey. Today, I'm excited to welcome Rita Wilkins to the program. She is the TEDx speaker whose talk has been viewed more than 1.5 million times. She's a best-selling author and a nationally recognized interior designer. She's known as America's downsizing designer. And after making a bold move, she downsized from a 5,000 square foot home to just 867 square feet. She called it her jewel box. Rita has been inspiring people of all ages to live with more intention, less stuff, and way more freedom. Her new book, A Journey to Less, is all about helping you design your dream life that really fits. Thank you very much for joining us today, Rita. Really appreciate you being here.
I'm really glad to be here, Mary. And I think we're so aligned with what our life should be at this stage of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Should be living the life that we really want. And as a designer, I truly believe we can actually design our life. And I've created methodology, and I've actually aligned it with my same design principles. If I were designing your kitchen or your building, then you can also use those same principles to design your life. And once I discovered that, I thought, wow, this is really something that, is possible for people. And so the whole downsizing designer thing it was just a platform for me then to be able to speak nationally and actually globally with regard to living with less.
That's wonderful. Well, this has been quite an adventure for you, for sure. Tell us how you got started.
So I've actually had an interior design firm, my own, for 40 years, and we've done work all over the country, everything from Supreme Court justice chambers to corporate interiors and to corporate penthouses, tiny houses, and tiny kitchens. So our experience is vast, and I'm single. And I built this huge home. I'd never built my own home before, so I had to build a home as part of the process. And so I built a 5,000 square foot home, which was absolutely beautiful. I lived there for 10 years. And during that time, my younger son was serving in the Peace Corps in Senegal at the time. And he said, Mom, you've got to come and see this. You've got to visit me. So I went and I stayed with him in his tiny hut for a month. A hut that he built, the thatched roof and all. And that trip just changed my life forever. So I actually did a TED talk on this because, if there's ever a point in your life where your head gets turned around and you're not sure exactly what happened, that's what happened to me when I was in Senegal, because I had never experienced people having so much joy in their heart and everything and and the laughter. And yet, when you look around, they have nothing. Her kitchen table, that my son's African mother, her kitchen table was the ground. And the fire and the big pot of whatever it was that was on there, and that served 16 or 20 people. My kitchen table in my big house actually sat 16 people.
Oh, my goodness.
There was one moment I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, I have this at home. And it's not exactly a happy place. I mean, I certainly had good times there, but it wasn't like this. So here we are sitting around that fire with all these beautiful people, and yet they have nothing. And all I know is that when I got on that plane to come back home, I said, whatever that was, I'm not sure I couldn't identify it yet. I said, I want that. And what I ultimately decided was to downsize from my 5,000 square foot home to my 867 square foot apartment, my jewel box, and give away 95% of my stuff to people who needed it. And I've never been happier.
That's wonderful. What a great story. And now you can see why 1.5 million people have looked at it on TEDx. Your speaking engagements have stood you well, and they will in the future for sure. Tell us how you became America's from Senegal to America's downsizing designer.
Well, of late, that's what I'm being called. And actually, it's very humbling because I didn't, if I would like to claim that this was all intentional, this whole journey, it was not. I just followed what I was hearing from people that, oh, you downsized, I need to downsize. So for 40 years, I've helped clients upsize, and that's what they were paying me for, to build these big houses. And now, they turned it around and they said, how do you get rid of all this stuff? And because I went through the journey myself, I think that's why they believed me so much, because I had the same amount of emotions, the same tears, the same difficulties. And I just started writing about it and then talking about it, then did the TED Talk and then wrote my book. And each one of those little pieces of the journey gave me an opportunity to create an audience. And we have a very large presence on on YouTube. I do videos every single week, something on downsizing, decluttering, and living a simpler life with less. But it was a journey. And I mean, now we are planning to continue to grow. But at that moment, to be called American's downsizing designer is very humbling, because that wasn't at all what I expected.
Well, congratulations. One could say it's easy to see how you got here. And it's also easy to say that acknowledge all of the work that it took to go from, an experience in Senegal to a very personal experience with your own home, and then to one of the, like you were just saying, people paid you to upsize for so many years as an interior designer. Tell us now about your methodology for lifestyle design, because there's a lot of crossover in your skills.
There really is. So if I were meeting with you about your kitchen, I would ask you 1,000 questions, as my boys would say. My mom's going to ask you 1,000 questions. Well, I have to, because I have to be able to get into your shoes and walk around them, understand what you want, what you don't want, and so forth. That to me has been such a joy of the process, because everybody is different. And so once you understand that, then you start putting together ideas, brainstorm ideas about what would work and what doesn't work. And I like to stretch people into what I call the magic of 3. So if we were doing your kitchen again, we could design that kitchen within those walls, and we could design it with just bumping through partially one wall, and we could design it with bumping through 2 walls. And so each one has new possibilities. And then there's the design phase, where we actually do all the drawings and selections and so forth. And then, of course, there's the implementation phase. So in interior design, we change people's lives through and how they live, work, and play through design. But then in lifestyle design, we help people change their lives by changing their mindset, changing their habits. So at one point in my life, I believed I had to have a big house. Well, then, I shifted my mindset, and my why is essentially what changed. My mindset had shifted to, I want less so I can live more. And then, I just changed the way that I lived. And that's what people wanted to follow. So we've been lucky to have people just say, I want that. And they don't know how. And so if I am that person to help lead them there, then that's what I want to do. So if I could lead them through designing their kitchen, great. If I can lead them through changing their life by changing mindset, changing habits, then that's great. And that's where my passion is, frankly. And the whole why is the center of why we'll change. And so for me, it was, I wanted to have that simple life like I saw in Senegal. And now that's what I have.
Well, that's a wonderful story and a wonderful approach to life. And as you know, I've mentioned to you before that I've personally followed your principles. And I've downsized several times because I've moved several times. And each time it's an adventure. You think that you've gone, thought that I had gone from big to small, and I had gone from big to medium. And then from medium, I'd gone to medium small.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You know, it's
But
funny, Mary. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's okay. Go
Well,
ahead.
as life changes, so do we. So at one point, that middle ground might have been perfect for you at that moment, but then life changes again, and life changes again, and we always have to be listening. So I wrote an article about the right size home. So I'm probably living in my perfect size home right now, but when I moved from my big home to my tiny apartment, I loved to entertain. Well, if you came to my house during or my apartment during that time, we didn't have a dining room table. You had a tray and you were on your lap. And I missed that. And then because I have a lot of overnight guests, I didn't have a guest room. If you wanted to stay overnight, you slept on the sofa. So what I was discerning at that moment is, okay, this is fun and it's really very nice and living in the city was fun, but I was missing some things for my lifestyle. So as I was able to discern that, then I upsized a little bit to a home that had a dining room and had an extra room for guests. So, I mean, I think it's very important that we listen to what we need at the time. So people that are aging might say these stairs are not good for us anymore. And so they're looking at moving to a one level home. Or, kids that are upsizing have not one kid, but now 2 and 3 kids, their lives are changing. So whether I was working with them in terms of interior design or lifestyle design, you have to be listening to what you need right now.
Mm. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just bookmark this moment in time
Mm-hmm.
and say, I am, and I do want to come back to what you were talking about talking with the younger generation. So downsizing has right now it seems to be all about boomers, right? People our age who have consumed a lot over time, and now their children don't want it. And so we need to figure out a way to get it back into the universe without harming the earth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also the generations that are coming up, and you and I have had a conversation about this, and I want to come back to it. But for we bookmark this moment in the conversation, we say, okay, we are looking at downsizing from a 3,000 square foot house to 1,200 square foot condo, right? How do we even get started?
That's the number one question. How do we get started? Well, all right. So if I were just using my design hat for the moment, I mean, you look at reality. So right now, let's say that in a 3,000 square foot home, you have a minimum of 3 bedrooms, maybe 4. And in a smaller 1,200 square feet, probably you have 2. And so what's the reality? The reality is I can't bring 4 beds. The reality is I'll probably bring 2 beds or maybe 1 bed and a sofa bed. So I have flexibility. So you really have to look at the reality. And ideally, you know where you're going to be moving, but most people are still, checking out where do we want to live and what does it look like? So we can guesstimate if you say we're going to move to a 2-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom apartment, we can guesstimate what you might need. And then you start to look at, it's called the ABCs of downsizing. It was a video that I did. It's just using the methodology of what I would do as a designer and then applying it. So then we would start asking about, what kind of lifestyle do you want? Do you want to live in the city? Do you want to live in the suburbs? Do you want to live in the country? So all of that has to do with lifestyle design. And once all of that's determined, then you start to look at what do I have? And I go to what I call the A list. So those are the things that you love. And no matter what, they're coming with you. So it could be grandma's, rocking chair or something like that. You obviously can't bring it all, but you have to discern what's most important to you and why. Because it has sentimental attachment, because, you've used that same desk for years and you just love it, or it was your dad's or something like that. So we start to plot it in, physically plot it into this floor plan. And then you have your plan. And you're going to know that those A-list items we're going to make work. The B-list items are those that you would really like to take with you if you can, if they fit, if they look good. And then the C-list, you don't like them anyway. So those are either going to get, donated or discarded. So it's really just a process. But then that's a process without the emotions.
That was going to be my next question.
Now you enter the emotions, and that's another whole story. And I can share with you that many, many times during my downsizing journey, and when I was trying to discern what should I take and all the things that people ask, I had many tears and many, overwhelms and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what I talk about. And to me, the emotions is the part that I think if we can get people past that, they're going to be good. So let's just say, and in my case, we were, decluttering one day, and my sister was there, and I opened a box that I hadn't seen in 10 years, and it was our father's alarm clock. And that alarm clock made me break into tears. And my sister said, well, why are you crying? She was younger. And I said, I remember Dad winding that clock to get up to provide for our family of 5. And anyway, it tore me up. And I said, how can I possibly get rid of that clock? And she was the one that said, well, let's write a story about it. Let's take a picture of it, do a Shutterfly album. And I even turned it one last time before I put it in the donate box. I could hear that. But so the sentimental journey of letting go of things that are meaningful to you is part of what I write about, what I do my videos about every single day.
Well, I had the privilege and the honor of having daughter Sarah involved in my downsizings.
Mhm.
And so if you have young people, I know that the parents in particular have sentimental attraction to things that are related to their sons or daughters, right? And, I know in my particular case, you want them to want it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You want them to want it. And the fact is that they don't. It's not as though they don't value it. It's not as though they don't, what they do is they value the experience,
Mhm.
right, that went with it.
Yes.
But having the freedom that they provide in saying no,
Yeah.
put it in the universe,
Yeah.
let it go to the next person
Mhm.
and bring them joy. It really gave me a sense of freedom.
We have a lot to learn from younger people, don't we?
Yes, we do.
In our generation, we bought stuff to buy bigger, better, more, and it didn't make us happier. And it took me a long time to realize that all the beautiful stuff when I had my big home, it wasn't making me happy. Sitting on the ground in Senegal made me happy. So when a young person says, Mom, I don't want your stuff, then you have to respect that. And I respect it from the point of view that they're making decisions that we did not make. They're discerning what do they want, what do they not want, what can fit in their home and not fit in their home. Many of the younger people are living in smaller homes, and they just don't want the stuff. Now, what I will say is chances are, and it's one of those methods that it's called Swedish death cleaning, where you literally, which a horrible name, but it's the methodology is wonderful. You invite your kids in, and maybe for coffee one morning, and say, look, I need to decide what you want and what you don't want, and can we walk through the house today, and we're going to mark that piece of artwork, that desk, whatever it is, and whatever you want you can take with you And what you don't want, you're giving me the freedom to say goodbye to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that freedom is so important because so oftentimes we, as the older adult, we think they're going to love that grandma's chest. They
Right.
don't want it. They've never liked it. And yet we've told ourselves they want it. So just have an honest conversation and then deal with it because it will maybe bring some tears. And they might surprise you about the things that they want. And this is so important, is that we do take the time to tell them the stories about why was that
Right.
rocker so important to you. And even if they don't write it down, they're going to remember, I remember mom telling me that story about that one day, so anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's part of the sentimental journey. And I have to say that I've learned so much from the younger generation because they can say no. I don't think I said no very much or not enough anyway. And now it's very easy to say no. But that's part of, the growth that you experience when you have a newfound freedom. And the freedom
Mm-hmm.
is owning less. So when people say, do you want this? And it's very easy for me to say no. Don't,
It's very easy for me to say no as well.
well, because
Give
we
me
live,
give me an experience that I'll and I will value that forever. But
yeah,
please, not another crock pot.
yeah, more crockpots.
So, for those who may not be at a stage in their lives where they are looking at the real downsizing,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
There's an interim step called decluttering that you have also really put a corner in the market on and really have a lot of expertise in this area as well. So it's kind of like a step between here and downsizing.
It is.
Tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Yeah. I call it downsizing by decluttering, because not everybody wants to move to a smaller home. Maybe they love their home. They raise their children there and they want to stay there. And I have so many people that have said that to me. We don't want to move, but what can we do? Well, you could declutter and your home will feel like a brand new home. So this could take place over, a couple of months, or could take place over a very long, hard weekend, or it could take place over a period of time. So if you were to say, we're going to stay in this home and we are retiring or we are retired, and two of those bedrooms upstairs are filled with kids' trophies and soccer stuff and everything else from lives past. So you start to think about lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle do you want right now? Because the kids are grown, they're gone. Number one, have them come and pick up whatever stuff they want, and then that room becomes free. Because the reality is, we as in America, we only use 20% of our rooms. And so that's a lot
Mm,
of real estate to not be used well.
mhm.
So you might say,
Absolutely.
I'm an artist and I really have always wanted an art room, or I love yoga, or I need an extra guest bedroom, or whatever it is. You need to determine what your lifestyle is, and then you kind of go from there. So when that room, and let's just talk about that one specific room, when it's decluttered, when the kids' stuff is no longer there, you have a whole new life right there. So then if you go room by room by room, all of those things that over the years they've collected and accumulated, which we do, you look at each area individually and just say, what could come out of this to help me create my new life?
Mhm.
Because maybe now you want more time to travel, be with your grandchildren, pursue hobbies that you've never pursued before. And if you're choosing to stay in your home, you want to repurpose your home rather than living with it exactly as it was for the last 30 or 35 years. And not only that, and this goes to the design side, so you can see I go back and forth, but you have to make it safe. So let's suppose you do have stairs. Okay, so for a number of years, you can probably still live there safely with stairs, but what else could you do? So, you can do all kinds of universal design principles, better lighting, fewer thresholds that would cause tripping hazards, grab bars, to go up and down stairs. Those are the kind of things that you should look at your home for safety as well. But the downsizing by decluttering is that interim period that you make your home new again by decluttering it and repurposing, giving it a brand new life according to whatever your lifestyle is right now. And then ultimately you might say, after 3 or 5 years, you might say, what, it doesn't make sense for us to live with this house with all these rooms and all these stairs and all this maintenance. And at that point, you might be ready to downsize.
And you will have already started the process and
exactly.
been along the way. Yeah. And
much easier for yourself. Yeah.
So you have this fascinating concept called decluttering backwards. Tell us about that.
Okay, this works. So if you've never tried it, just put away all of your ideas about decluttering and try this. And I would recommend maybe you start on one closet and you look in that closet, and the old way of doing it is, what can I get rid of? The clothes that don't fit, but the decluttering backwards, you reverse that mindset and you challenge yourself to only look at the things you love. So I love that red dress. I love that pair of black pants. I love whatever. And you take those items out and put them over here. Everything else in your closet, just either get rid of or, have another edit and say, I really do like this dress. And so by getting just the things that you love and putting those aside, everything that's in there is kind of up for grabs. And you would be surprised. I'm going to guess that probably we only use about 20% of what's in our closets. And you might test yourself. I tested myself, and right now, I still have things in there that I should get rid of. But it's pretty amazing, because what do you grab every day? What do you grab when you're going out? What do you grab when you're going to the store? And we tend to grab the same things. So the decluttering backwards method is fabulous. It's faster, it's smarter, it's easier. And
it sounds like it feels good.
Oh, it feels great.
It's revisiting those things that you love. And you mentioned to me at one time that you had 5 closets.
No, this is embarrassing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up for an embarrassment.
It's okay, because I actually announced it on the TEDx stage. I had 9 closets and 11 rolling racks filled with clothes.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So why did I have so much stuff? And it's embarrassing only because, there's no way I should have ever had all that stuff. I was buying things because I was lonely, because whatever. And that was my activity, is I would go do shopping therapy. Well, but I had a wake-up call, and that was, of course, Senegal was a wake-up call. But I thought, you know what, Rita, you've got this one closet full of beautiful suits. When was the last time you wore a business suit? So I kept probably 3 or 4, but I had one whole closet full. And one of the best days of my decluttering journey was on a snowy day, and I had decided to attack one of my many closets. And I walked in, it was a walk-in closet, and the beautiful suits, many of them still had tags on them. And I actually started to cry, because one of my favorite charities is a women's shelter where women flee in the middle of the night because they're afraid. And so I decided this is the day I'm going to get rid of all those things. I packed up probably 95% of those and brought them to the shelter. And what gave me such joy was to think, one of these women is going to be wearing it to a job interview, or maybe she's never been dressed up before. And that gave me such joy. It was doing it from my heart. I wasn't doing it because I'm downsizing. It was because I knew other people would want it. And I had a similar experience when I lived in Philly, in my apartment, even though I did declutter a lot, I still had more stuff. And I remember looking at some of my winter coats. And of course, it gets cold in that city. But I thought, I'm not using these coats. And I thought, it's cold outside. I bet that women's shelter would love some of these coats. So I packed them up and they were gone. So, yeah, um, it's just every single day there was something new that you experienced, because
Right.
decluttering is a roller coaster of emotions. And one day you're excited about it and doing great. And then the next day you're crying your eyes out. And that's okay.
Well, my next question is going to be, what are the things that are holding us back from the life that we really want? You just mentioned the roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else?
Okay. So there is something called the items that you might need someday.
Right,
So
right.
we all have those things, right? So whether it's that dress in the closet, whether it's this one tickles me because I just heard this. Someone had just gotten brand new tires for their car, and she was complaining because her husband kept the old tires because he might need them someday. And I thought that was so funny. So those are someday items, and that's one reason people hold on to things. Another one is sentimental attachment, and that's because that my dad's clock was hard to let go of, but I did. Um, Pictures, like family pictures, um, greeting cards. The other day I was
Yes.
with a woman, and it made me very sad because she was needing to declutter, and we came across two greeting cards. And I said, okay, well, what are you going to do with those? Thinking she would say, well, let's get rid of them. She said, Rita, I have so little love in my life. When someone sends me something beautiful like that, I need to keep it. So,
Mm,
that's obviously a sentimental attachment. Um, Other ones are aspirational clutter. So those are things like the plaques that you might have received,
right.
awards, the trophies, those kind of things. That why are our kids' rooms filled with trophies? Because that was a time of your life, of their life. You're very proud of it. But then
Mm,
there comes another time of your life. Do you really need that trophy? I mean,
right.
kids can take them if they want them. They're going to clutter their home too. But if not, just take pictures of them, and so the aspirational, the other one is abundance clutter. So some people um, feel good when they have an overabundance of stuff. So if you go to Costco, and I mean, for me to go to Costco, it's a joke because, like, where am I going to put it all? And why do I need 12 rolls of toilet paper? But some people feel security when, and they,
Right.
and that's fine, but you have to understand that about yourself, that, okay, every time I go to Costco, I pick up another 12 pack of toilet paper. So why are we doing that? And so that's always the important thing, is to understand, why do we collect all these things? And then there's the bargain
Yeah.
clutter. And we've all been guilty of that. Something's on sale. So we buy it. And then when I looked at the clothes in my closet, many of those things were bought on sale, and I never used them. So
Hmm.
those are some of the reasons that we keep things, and it does hold us back from moving forward. So you have to address, why am I holding on to this? What do I
Right.
need to do? And here's a very simple method. So I'm going to take my dad's alarm clock. So hold it, or I'm going to do my mom's teacups because that was another hard thing. So hold that teacup in your hand and think of the wonderful flood of memories. In my case, it was very good memories of just drinking tea with my mom. And then the next thing you do is say, do I need it? Do I want it? Do I use it? Okay, well, I didn't need 12, but I could keep one or two.
Hmm.
And then what would it make you feel like if you let go of this? Because if I'm looking at 12, I'm moving to a tiny apartment. Okay, I would feel so relieved that someone else might be using those teacups right now. Or I would feel so relieved that I'm no longer burdened with 12 teacups. I have two though. You know, so that's just a little process that you can go through when some of those things are, they're struggling. And then also just to certainly take photos, write a story about it, like what made mom cry over an alarm clock, or and make it fun, make it funny, whatever you want to do. But to write it down, that's really part of the process of just letting go.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, I have one final question.
Mhm.
What are the differences between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset?
Okay. Okay. So this happens in all businesses, right? So um, a fixed mindset is one where you just don't think you could ever change. It is the way it is. And so I have one, I'll refer to this client. Um, they were so fixed in, I never want to move. I love stuff the way that it is. And it was pretty difficult for the spouse to have to deal with this because she wanted to declutter, she wanted to move, she wanted to move near the grandchildren. And so that's fixed because it's just not movable. And then the growth mindset is that which is, I don't know if I really want to move, but I'm open to it, and I don't know how to declutter this room, but I'm open to learning, and then taking risks and challenges, challenge yourself to actually do it,
Mhm.
and to see opportunity in that. So for me, my big house, I probably had a fixed mindset about, oh, this is exactly what I want. And then I had my mind shift about, well, that's not exactly what you want, is it? But by keeping your eyes open for new opportunities, new chances for growth, um, what would it be like to live in a tiny apartment in Philadelphia? Some people that are exploring right now, like, what would it be like to live in a smaller home versus my big home?
Mhm.
Because our lifestyle has changed. We're retiring, the kids are grown. So having an open and not a fixed mindset, a growth mindset, um, will help you take risks, embrace opportunities, and have change in your life. and
Mhm.
and that's if you want it. And even people that have a very fixed mindset, when they see, oh, my friends are living in this community and there's so much social life going on there. We live in the country in this big house, and if we move to that smaller house, we could have a completely different lifestyle. So there are ways to create openings in that fixed mindset.
Mhm.
So
And growth in that capacity or that context is not about growing more stuff. It's about growing less stuff and more opportunity.
That's
So,
that's the bottom line, because less is more. So
yes.
what I discovered, and that's what I wrote my first book about, was when you live with less, you live more, and
Hmm.
so you have more time, more money, more freedom, more energy, um, and um, and actually you have more ability to live your purpose,
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
really the difference. You're not
Absolutely.
bogged down by that big house and all that stuff. You now have that freedom. That's what we all want, is freedom.
Absolutely. That's what we all want is freedom of just freedom.
Yeah,
Do you hear me taking a breath there?
yeah,
Uh, uh, what joy. What
yeah,
joy.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Rita.
Well,
I know that there are many people that would love to have you come and speak with them. How do they contact you?
okay. They can reach me at Rita Wilkins at ritawilkins.com. And they can go to my website. That's the same website. And if they want to, I can give you a phone number if you'd like, 302-475-5663. They're welcome to call me directly, and we can talk about it. But I'd love
Sure.
the opportunity to speak, because the more this word gets out, I think more and more people are going to really embrace the joy of living with less.
I think so too. And thank you for the work that you're doing. You're impacting a lot of lives.
Thank you, Mary.
So thanks for joining us today and sharing your insights. You can find all of Rita's downloads and great resources at her website, like she just mentioned, ritawilkins.com. Be sure to download the free 5-step guide to downsizing and buy her new book, A Journey to Less, A Life Designed for More. I'm Mary McCorvey, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Mary McCorvey's Experience Over Expectations podcast. Be sure to subscribe today on YouTube and Substack, or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in.